I never thought the proudest moment of my life would become the doorway to my worst nightmare. But there I was, standing in the reception hall of the Omaha Veterans Center on a Thursday afternoon in late September, my bronze star displayed in a shadow box under my arm, watching my son Derek accept an award for community service on my behalf, while I recovered from what everyone believed was a minor surgery. The irony would hit me 3 days later. The surgery was real. The recovery was real. But Derek's concern, that was the performance of a lifetime. My name is Robert James Whitmore, 58 years old, 22 years in the United States Army, including 3 deployments to Iraq and 1 to Afghanistan. Master Sergeant, retired. And apparently the biggest fool in Douglas County, Nebraska. Let me take you back to where this really started, because betrayal doesn't happen overnight. It grows in the dark, in the spaces between what you see and what you refuse to believe. It was August 15th when Dr. Patricia Morgan sat me down in her office at Methodist Hospital and said the words that change everything. Pancreatic mass, possible malignancy. We need to operate within 2 weeks. I remember staring at the anatomy poster on her wall, at the digestive system diagram, thinking how strange it was that something so small inside me could be a death sentence. Stage 2, she said. Operable, but aggressive. 50-50 odds with surgery and chemotherapy. Without it, 6 months, maybe 8. I called Derek from the parking lot. He answered on the first ring, which should have been my first clue. My son never answered on the first ring. Dad, hey, I'm just leaving the gym. What's up? I've got cancer, Derek. They found it this morning. Pancreatic. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he said, Jesus, Dad. I'm so sorry. When do they operate? 2 weeks, September 1st. I'm going to need help after. Maybe stay with you and Brittany for a few weeks while I recover, of course. Of course, Dad. Whatever you need. We'll take care of everything. Everything. That word should have worried me more. Derek was my only child. His mother, my wife Sarah, died 11 years ago from an aneurysm. Dropped dead at 43 while grocery shopping. 1 minute she was comparing prices on cereal. The next she was gone. Derek was 16 then. I raised him alone after that, through his rebellious phase, through community college, through his rocky marriage to Brittany Chen, through the birth of my grandson Austin, who was now 7 years old. I'd done everything right. Hadn't I? Showed up to every baseball game when I was stateside, paid for his wedding, helped with the down payment on their house in West Omaha, gave him $35,000 in cash 3 years ago when his contracting business was failing. What father wouldn't? The surgery was scheduled for dawn on September 1st. Derek and Brittany picked me up at 4:30 in the morning, both of them silent and tense in their Chevy Tahoe. Austin was at Brittany's mother's house. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. I remember sitting in pre-op wearing the gown that never quite closes in the back, and Derek squeezed my shoulder. You're going to be fine, Dad. You're the toughest guy I know. You survived Fallujah. This is nothing. I smiled at him, believed that my son loved me enough to be honest. The anesthesiologist asked me to count backward from 10. I made it to 7. I woke up 14 hours later in ICU. The surgery had complications. What they thought was a contained tumor had spread to nearby tissue. Dr. Morgan had to remove more than anticipated, including part of my pancreas and sections of surrounding organs. I'd be in the hospital for at least a week, maybe 2. Recovery at home would be months, not weeks. I'd need physical therapy, assistance with basic activities, someone to manage my medications, my diet, my follow-up appointments. I was, in medical terms, going to be a significant burden. That night, groggy from morphine, I heard Derek and Brittany talking in the hallway outside my room. The door was cracked open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. Their voices just carried. This changes everything, Brittany said. We can't have him living with us for months, Derek. We have Austin to think about. We have our lives. I know, Derek replied. But what am I supposed to do? He's my father. He just had cancer surgery. You're supposed to figure it out. We talked about this. If it was just a few weeks, fine, but months, with his medications and physical therapy and God knows what else, we didn't sign up for this. Lower your voice. He might hear you. I don't care if he hears me. I'm not doing this. Find another solution. I closed my eyes and pretended to sleep when the nurse came in to check my vitals. When Derek came back into the room an hour later, he smiled at me. "How you feeling, Dad?" "Like I got hit by a truck. That's the morphine talking. You're going to be fine. Listen, the doctor said recovery is going to be longer than we thought. I was thinking maybe we should look into a rehabilitation facility, somewhere with professional care, just for the first month or so. Until you're stronger. A rehab facility, like a nursing home." No, not like that. It's more like a recovery center. They specialize in post-surgical care, physical therapy on site, nutritionists, the works. It'll actually be better for you than staying with us. More professional. I'm sure insurance will cover most of it. Something cold settled in my chest. "You don't want me staying with you." "Dad, it's not like that. Brittany and I just want what's best for your recovery. And honestly, with Austin's school schedule and my work projects, we're not equipped to give you the level of care you need. We're not medical professionals. I survived 3 IED blasts in Iraq, Derek. I think I can survive recovery in a spare bedroom." He looked away. "Let me look into some options, okay? Just let me do some research. We'll talk about it when you're feeling better." They released me from the hospital on September 9th. Derek picked me up alone. Brittany had to work, he said. Austin had soccer practice. The rehab facility he'd researched was called Meadowbrook Recovery Center, a bland building off 72nd Street that looked exactly like what it was, a place where people went when their families didn't want them anymore. The director, a woman named Linda Foster with aggressively cheerful energy, showed us around. Private rooms, community dining, physical therapy gym, cable television. It was fine. It was perfectly adequate. It was also $700 a day, and Medicare would only cover the first 20 days at full rate. After that, I'd be paying most of it out of pocket. "That's almost $4,000 a week after the Medicare cutoff," I said to Derek as we sat in Linda's office. "I can't afford that for months. You have savings, Dad. You have the house. You'll figure it out." We both knew I had more than savings. I'd been careful my entire life. Military pension of $3,200 a month. VA disability payments of $1,800 a month. Social Security starting next year. And assets. The house in Dundee, a neighborhood that had gentrified beautifully over the past decade. I'd bought it in 1998 for $89,000. Now it was worth close to $450,000. Paid off, free and clear. I also had my truck, a 2021 Ford F-150 worth about $38,000. Savings accounts totaling $96,000. My retirement accounts, another $270,000, and a life insurance policy worth $500,000, with Derek as the sole beneficiary. My estate, if you added it all up, was worth roughly $1.5 million, and every penny of it was going to Derek in my will. I signed the papers for Meadowbrook that afternoon, moved in that evening. Derek helped me unpack my duffel bag in the tiny room that smelled like industrial cleaner and sadness. The window overlooked the parking lot. I watched him drive away in the Tahoe I'd helped him buy 2 years ago. Told myself I was being oversensitive, that he was just overwhelmed, that he'd come around. That night I lay in the narrow bed, listening to someone's television bleeding through the wall, and wondered how I'd gotten here. The next 3 weeks were a blur of physical therapy, bland food, and isolation. Derek visited twice, both times for less than 30 minutes. The first visit, he brought me a magazine about fishing, something I'd never shown any interest in. Sat in the chair by my bed checking his phone every few minutes, asked how I was feeling in that tone people use when they don't really want to know the answer. The second visit was even worse. He talked about a remodeling job he'd landed, about Austin's soccer team, about Brittany's promotion at work. Never once asked about my pain levels, never asked if I needed anything. Just filled the air with words until enough time had passed that he could leave with a clear conscience. Brittany didn't visit at all. Austin came once, fidgeting and uncomfortable, clearly forced to be there. He'd brought me a drawing he'd made at school, a stick-figure grandpa with a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Thanks, buddy," I'd said. "I'll put this right here on my nightstand." He'd nodded, eager to leave. "Grandpa, do you have cancer?" "Yes, I do." "Are you going to die?" "I don't know yet, Austin. I hope not." His eyes went wide with something that looked like fear, but then Derek said, "Come on, sport. Let's let Grandpa rest." And they were gone. The nurses were kind, but overworked. Maria, a Filipino woman in her 50s, would sometimes sit with me during her breaks. Tell me about her own father, who died of lung cancer 5 years ago, how she wished she'd had more time with him, how she'd worked too much and visited too little, and now all she had were regrets. "You still have time with your son," she told me one afternoon while checking my vitals. "Don't waste it being angry." "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm just sad." "That's worse," she said. "Anger burns hot and dies fast. Sadness lingers. It gets into your bones. Don't let it." My roommate for 2 days was an 84-year-old man named Gene, who cried at night for his daughter who never called. He'd been a machinist for 40 years, raised 3 kids alone after his wife left him in the 70s, worked double shifts to keep them fed and clothed, put all 3 through college, and now they were too busy for him. His daughter lived in California, sent cards at Christmas, never called. His sons visited once a month, stayed for 20 minutes, looked relieved when they could leave. We'd talk sometimes in the dark, about what we'd done wrong, about where we'd failed. Gene thought he'd been too hard on them when they were young, too focused on discipline and not enough on affection. "Maybe if I'd hugged them more," he said one night. "Maybe if I'd said I love you instead of assuming they knew." But I was raised by a man who never said those words. I didn't know how. "What's your excuse?" "My excuse? I was too soft. I gave my son everything he asked for and taught him that asking was the same as deserving. I made him weak. I made him entitled. And now he's trying to steal from me because he thinks he's owed it." Gene laughed, bitter and dry. "So you were too soft and I was too hard, and we both ended up in the same place, alone in a rehab facility with ungrateful kids. Makes you wonder if it matters at all. What we do, how we raise them. Maybe some people are just born to disappoint you, or maybe we're born to be disappointed. Either way, here we are." Gene died 3 days later, heart attack in the middle of the night. I woke up to the sound of nurses rushing into our room, the crash cart, the frantic energy of trying to save someone who'd already let go. They moved him out while I pretended to sleep. I never found out if his daughter came to the funeral. I spent my time reading, doing crosswords, and trying not to think about the biopsy results I was waiting for. There was a small library in the common room, donated books with broken spines and dog-eared pages. I worked my way through old westerns, spy thrillers, anything that would keep my mind occupied. At night, I'd lie awake and listen to the sounds of the facility. Someone's television bleeding through the walls, an old woman calling for her mother, the squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum floors, the mechanical hum of the building itself, breathing in and out like a dying animal. This is where I'll end up, I thought. Not here specifically, but somewhere like here. A place where old people go when their families don't want them anymore. A warehouse for the inconvenient, the unwanted, the burdensome, and I'll die here, alone, with strangers checking my pulse and no one holding my hand. The pathology report came back on September 28th. Dr. Morgan called me directly. "Robert, I have good news. The margins were clean. We got it all. No evidence of metastasis to lymph nodes. With chemotherapy, your prognosis is excellent. 80% 5-year survival rate. You beat this." I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt nothing, just a strange emptiness. Thank you, Doctor. That's wonderful news. Are you all right, Robert? You don't sound relieved. I'm relieved. Just tired. That's understandable. We'll schedule your first chemo session for next week. You're going to be fine. Yes, I said. Fine. I hung up and stared at the ceiling. I'd beaten cancer, but I'd lost my son, and somehow the cancer felt like the easier fight. October 3rd was a Tuesday. I'd been at Meadowbrook for 3.5 weeks. My physical therapy was progressing well. I could walk without assistance, manage my own medications. I was ready to go home. I'd called Derek twice that morning to discuss discharge plans. Both calls went to voicemail. I was sitting in the common room, watching CNN with Jean's replacement roommate, a stroke victim named Albert, when a man I'd never seen before sat down beside me. He was maybe 45, worn jeans, flannel shirt, baseball cap advertising a roofing company. He didn't look at me, just stared at the television. Then he said very quietly, "You're Robert Whitmore, right?" I turned to him. "Do I know you?" "No, sir. But I know your son, Derek Whitmore. He hired my company last month to do some work. I'm not sure if you know this, but he's been showing your house to real estate agents. Had 3 walkthroughs last week. I think he's planning to sell it." The words didn't make sense at first. My house? There must be some mistake. That's my house. He can't sell my house. "I don't know the legal details, sir. I just know what I saw. I do roofing work. I was replacing shingles on your neighbor's house, the blue Colonial 2 doors down. Saw the real estate signs. Saw Derek letting people in. Heard him talking about closing before the end of the month. I thought you should know." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because my dad was a veteran too, Marine Corps. And when he got sick, my brother tried to pull the same kind of thing, tried to get power of attorney, sell Dad's assets, all of it. I didn't let it happen. Figured maybe you'd want the chance to stop it too." Then he stood up and walked away, never even told me his name. I sat there for 10 minutes, my mind racing. It wasn't possible. The house was in my name. Derek couldn't sell it without my signature. Unless he had power of attorney, unless I'd signed something in the hospital when I was drugged on morphine, unless he'd forged documents. My hands were shaking when I called Derek. This time he answered. "Hey, Dad. What's up? I need you to come get me. Now. Is everything okay? Just come get me. We need to talk. Dad, I'm in the middle of something. It can wait until tomorrow." "No, Derek, it can't wait. Either you come get me in the next hour, or I'm calling a cab and coming to find you myself." There was a long pause. "Fine. I'll be there in 45 minutes. He arrived in 53 minutes. I was waiting in the lobby with my duffel bag packed. His face was tight when he walked in. "What's this about, Dad? You're not ready to be discharged yet. Take me home, to my house. Derek, you can't go home yet. You need at least another 2 weeks of care. Take me to my house right now, or I swear to God I'll call the police." His jaw tightened. "Fine, get in the car." The drive to Dundee took 18 minutes. Neither of us spoke. When we pulled up to my house, the house I'd lived in for 26 years, the house where Sarah and I had raised Derek, there was a real estate sign in the front yard. Caldwell Realty, Jennifer Strickland, agent, for sale, open house Sunday. I stared at that sign. "Derek, what the hell is this?" "Dad, I can explain. Explain how there's a for sale sign in my yard. Explain how you're trying to sell my house without telling me." I wasn't trying to hide it. "I was going to talk to you about it this week. You need to sell the house, Dad. The medical bills are going to be enormous. The rehab facility costs are piling up. You're going to need ongoing care. The house is your biggest asset. It makes sense to liquidate it now, pay off everything, and then figure out next steps. Next steps? What next steps? Where exactly am I supposed to live? We'll find you a place. Maybe a nice senior apartment. Something manageable. You don't need a 3-bedroom house anymore. This isn't about need, Derek. This is my home." He turned to me, and for the first time I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Calculation. Cold, clear calculation. Dad, you have cancer. Even with good prognosis, you're 58 years old with a serious medical history. You're not going to be able to maintain this house. The stairs alone are a liability, the yard work, the upkeep. And honestly, Brittany and I have been talking. When you die, this house comes to me anyway. We'd like to use that equity now for Austin's college fund, for our future. It makes financial sense to sell now while the market's hot. When I die, I'm not dead yet, you little bastard. Don't call me that. I'm being practical. Someone has to be. You're being emotional. That's fine. You're allowed to be emotional. But the numbers don't lie. You can't afford to keep this house and pay for your medical care, so we liquidate assets, we streamline. We make smart choices. I stared at my son. This person I'd raised, this person I'd sacrificed for. Who are you? I'm your son who's trying to help you. Help me? You stuck me in a rehab facility and put my house up for sale behind my back. That's not help, Derek. That's theft. It's not theft when it's going to be mine anyway. Jesus Christ, listen to yourself. I didn't want to have this conversation like this. I wanted to sit down, show you the spreadsheets, explain the financial strategy. But you're being stubborn, you're being proud. And pride doesn't pay medical bills, Dad. Get out of my house. What? Get out of my house. Now, before I call the police and have you arrested for trespassing and fraud. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. The surgery, the medications, they're affecting your judgment. My judgment is fine. Yours is what's broken. Get out. He left. I stood in my living room, my house, my home, and felt the full weight of what had happened. My son had tried to steal my life out from under me. I called Jennifer Strickland, the real estate agent, that afternoon. Ms. Strickland, this is Robert Whitmore. You have a sign in my yard. I need you to remove it immediately and cancel any listing for my property. There was a pause. Mr. Whitmore, Derek said you were in a care facility, recovering from surgery. He said you'd authorized him to handle the sale. I authorized nothing. That property is in my name only. If you've been showing my house, you've been doing it without my permission. If you have documents saying otherwise, they're forgeries. I'll be contacting a lawyer. Mr. Whitmore, I'm so sorry. Derek presented me with power of attorney documents. He said you'd signed them in the hospital. He seemed very credible. I'm sure he did. Remove the sign. Cancel the listing. If I see one more potential buyer on my property, I'll sue you and your brokerage. The sign was gone by evening. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and went through every document I owned. Found the power of attorney papers in a folder Derek had apparently prepared. Dated September 2nd, the day after my surgery. My signature at the bottom. Except it wasn't quite my signature. It was close. Very close. Good enough to fool a real estate agent who'd never seen my actual signature. But I'd been signing my name for 58 years. I knew my own handwriting. The R was wrong. The loop on the W was too wide. Derek had forged my signature. I called my lawyer, Martin Hayes, first thing Wednesday morning. Martin, I need to see you today. It's urgent. Martin was 67, former JAG officer. We'd served together in the late 90s. He agreed to meet me that afternoon. I showed him everything, the power of attorney documents, the real estate listing, the timeline. Martin's face darkened as he read through it all. Robert, this is fraud. Clear, prosecutable fraud. Your son forged legal documents and attempted to sell your property without your consent. You could have him arrested. I don't want him arrested, Martin. I want to protect myself. And I want to know if he's done anything else. Stolen from accounts, moved money. I want an audit. We'll start with your bank accounts, credit cards. Any joint accounts? No joint accounts. Everything's in my name. Good. That makes it harder for him to access, but with forged POA documents he could have tried. Let me make some calls. We'll get to the bottom of this. The investigation took 6 days. What Martin found made me physically ill. Derek had used the forged power of attorney to access my brokerage account, moved $43,000 from my retirement fund into an account in his name, convinced the bank rep he was acting on my behalf during my medical crisis. The transaction was dated September 15th, 2 weeks after my surgery, when I was still too weak to check my accounts. He'd also taken out a line of credit against my house, $50,000, forged my signature on the loan documents. The money went into his business account, disappeared into operating costs for his contracting company. In total, Derek had stolen or attempted to steal over $93,000 from me, his own father, while I was recovering from cancer surgery. Martin sat across from me in his office, and I could see the anger in his eyes. "You're pressing charges." "It's not a question, Robert. It's fraud, elder abuse, financial exploitation. He goes to prison for this. I can't send my son to prison, Martin." "Why the hell not?" "Because he's my son. Because I raised him. Because somewhere along the way I failed him, and this is partially my fault. That's bullshit, and you know it. You didn't fail him. He failed you. He's a grown man who made deliberate criminal choices. Stop protecting him. I'm not protecting him. I'm protecting myself from becoming the father who sent his only child to prison. What kind of man does that make me?" We sat in silence. Finally, Martin said, "Then let me propose something else. We don't press criminal charges, but we make damn sure he never gets a penny from you again. We revoke that forged power of attorney publicly. We file restraining orders if necessary. We change your will. We set up trusts and protections that mean even if you die tomorrow, Derek gets nothing. We make him radioactive to your estate. Can you do that? I can do all of it. But Robert, you need to be sure, because once we do this, there's no going back. Your relationship with Derek is over." "Maybe it already is," I said quietly. "Maybe it's been over for a long time, and I was just too blind to see it." Over the next 3 weeks, Martin and I systematically dismantled Derek's access to my life. We reported the fraud to the banks and brokerage, recovered $38,000 of the $43,000 from the retirement account. The rest was gone. We filed a police report for the record but didn't press charges per my request. We revoked all power of attorney, changed all my passwords, set up two-factor authentication on everything, added alerts to my credit, filed a restraining order requiring Derek to stay at least 500 feet from me and my property. And then we changed my will. The new will was specific and brutal. "To my son, Derek Whitmore, I leave the sum of $1 and nothing more. The rest of my estate, all assets, properties, accounts, and life insurance proceeds would go into a charitable trust. Beneficiaries, Wounded Warrior Project, Operation Homefront, Fisher House Foundation, organizations that actually helped veterans instead of exploiting them. Derek would get nothing. Martin had the papers ready by October 24th. I signed them in his office, witnesses present, notarized and legal. As I wrote my name on the final page, I felt something break inside me. This was my son, my only child, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, the teenager I'd stayed up with when he had nightmares about his mother's death, the man I'd believed would take care of me when I got old, and I was writing him out of my life, completely, permanently. "Are you all right?" Martin asked. "No," I said, "but I'm doing the right thing. That's all that matters now." Derek tried calling me 47 times over the next week. I didn't answer. He showed up at my house twice. I called the police both times. They escorted him away with warnings about the restraining order. He sent emails, text messages, a 4-page letter delivered by courier. All of them said the same thing, that he was sorry, that he'd made mistakes, that he'd panicked about money and made bad choices, that he loved me, that we could fix this if I'd just talk to him. I read every word. Felt nothing. It's strange how betrayal works. It doesn't explode. It doesn't rage. It just empties you out until there's nothing left but the echo of what used to be love. November arrived cold and grey. I started chemotherapy on the 5th. 3 cycles, 3 weeks apart. The side effects were manageable: fatigue, nausea, some hair loss, though at 58 I didn't have much to lose anyway. Dr. Morgan was optimistic. I was responding well. The cancer markers in my blood were dropping. I had a real chance. I should have felt grateful, hopeful. Instead, I felt hollowed out. I'd survived cancer but lost my son, won the battle and lost the war. I spent Thanksgiving alone, reheated turkey breast from the grocery store, instant mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie from a box. I sat at my kitchen table and thought about all the Thanksgivings before this one. Sarah laughing at my dry turkey, Derek stealing extra rolls, the noise and warmth of family. All of it gone now. Just silence and the hum of the refrigerator. December 10th was a Monday. I'd finished my second round of chemo the week before and was feeling better, strong enough to do some work around the house. The fatigue was still there, lingering in my bones like a low-grade fever that never quite broke. But I could function, could walk without getting winded, could think clearly without the fog that had settled over my brain during treatment. I was replacing the weather stripping on the back door, one of those small maintenance tasks Sarah used to remind me about when she was alive. When someone knocked on the front, I almost didn't answer. Wasn't expecting anyone. The few friends I had left had drifted away after Sarah died. Most of my army buddies were scattered across the country. The neighbors were polite but distant. Derek hadn't called in weeks. But something made me walk to the door and look through the peephole. A woman stood on my porch, mid-50s, professional clothing under a wool coat, leather briefcase, dark hair pulled back, sharp eyes that had seen things. I didn't recognize her. I opened the door with the chain still latched. "Can I help you? Mr. Whitmore? Robert Whitmore?" "Yes, my name is Angela Torres. I'm a private investigator. I need to talk to you about your son." I stared at her through the gap in the door. "What about my son? May I come in? This isn't a conversation for the porch. Your neighbors are watching. I don't know you. Show me credentials." She held up a license. "Nebraska private investigator, certified and bonded, photo ID, business card." Everything looked legitimate. I unlatched the chain and let her in. She sat on my couch, briefcase on her lap, and looked at me with something like pity, the kind of pity people give you when they know something you don't. When they're about to ruin your day, but can't help themselves because they think you deserve to know the truth. "Mr. Whitmore, I've been hired by a client to investigate Derek Whitmore's business practices, financial irregularities, unpaid debts, suspicious transactions. During that investigation, I uncovered information about what he did to you. The fraud, the attempted sale of your house, the stolen retirement funds. I've read the police reports, talked to your lawyer. I know what happened. And I'm here because I think you should know the full extent of what your son has been doing. I already know enough. Do you know about Austin's college fund?" I froze. "What about it?" "Derek has been telling everyone, your friends, his colleagues, relatives, even people at his church, that he's selling your house to fund Austin's education, that you agreed to it because you want your grandson to have opportunities, that you're a devoted grandfather who's making sacrifices for the next generation. He's been using your name as justification, your reputation, playing the good son, taking care of his sick father's wishes, getting sympathy, getting respect, getting people to trust him. Meanwhile, he's lying to everyone, using your illness as a cover story for his fraud." "It's all lies," I said quietly. "I never agreed to anything. I know it's lies, but other people don't. I've interviewed 12 people in the last week who all think Derek Whitmore is a devoted son, a family man, someone who's making hard choices to take care of his aging father. Your name is attached to his crimes, Mr. Whitmore, and if you don't do something about it, your reputation goes down with his. There's more, isn't there?" Angela opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Yes, there's more. Derek has been liquidating assets from his business, selling equipment at below market value, closing accounts, transferring funds. He's preparing to declare bankruptcy. The contracting company is done. He's buried in debt, over $318,000. And here's where it gets ugly. Most of that debt isn't business loans or supplier credit. It's gambling debts. Gambling? Your son has a serious problem, Mr. Whitmore. Started about 3.5 years ago. We've traced transactions to offshore gambling sites, online poker rooms, sports betting platforms, underground bookies. He's lost everything. The business was legitimate once. Good reputation, solid contracts. Then he started gambling. First it was casual, fantasy football, office betting pools. Then it escalated. Late nights on poker sites, betting thousands on college basketball games, borrowing from loan sharks to cover losses. The classic spiral. He tried to hide it, got good at lying, created shell accounts, falsified business expenses, kept 2 sets of books. But eventually the numbers don't lie. The debts got too big, the interest too high. The creditors too aggressive, and when he couldn't hide it anymore, when the walls were closing in, he looked at you, at your assets, your house, your retirement funds, your life insurance policy, and decided you were his way out. She handed me a document. Bank records showing transfers from Derek's accounts to gambling sites. Dates going back 3 years, amounts that made me physically ill, $50,000 in 1 month. 70,000 the next. He'd bet more money than most people make in a year and lost it all. I stared at the numbers 3 years ago, when I'd given him $35,000 to save his business. Derek had called me in a panic, said a major client hadn't paid, said he needed bridge financing to make payroll, said it was temporary, just a few weeks until the invoice cleared. I'd believed him, liquidated part of my savings to help. Told him not to worry about paying it back, just get back on his feet. That money went straight to a bookie in Council Bluffs. Paid off debts Derek had racked up betting on NFL games. It didn't save his business. It just bought him more time to dig himself deeper. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Angela closed the folder. "Because my client, one of the creditors Derek owes money to, wants to know if you're planning to pay his debts. They've been watching him. They know about the fraud. They know he tried to sell your house. They know he has access to your estate when you die, and they want to know if you're going to bail him out, if you're going to pay what he owes. Because if you're not, they're going to take more aggressive collection actions, legal and otherwise. I'm not paying his debts. He gets nothing from me. Good. That's what I needed to know." She stood to leave, briefcase in hand, then paused at the door. "Mr. Whitmore, I grew up with an addict father. Gambling, alcohol, the whole package. It destroyed my family, bankrupted us twice, turned my mother into a shell of herself. I watched her enable him for 20 years, give him money, cover for him, believe his promises. It never helped. It only made it worse. I'm telling you this because I see the same pattern with Derek. He's sick. The gambling is a disease, but it's his disease, not yours. You can't save him. You can only save yourself." She reached into her pocket, pulled out a business card. "If you need anything. If the creditors come after you, if Derek escalates, call me. I work for them, but I don't like their methods, and I respect veterans. My father was Air Force before the addiction took him. I took the card. Thank you." She nodded and left. I sat in my living room for hours after she left, tried to reconcile the Derek I'd raised with this person Angela Torres described. A gambling addict, a liar, a thief. Where had it started? When had I missed the signs? Or had I seen them and ignored them because it was easier to believe my son was fine? I thought about the late-night phone calls he'd gotten 3 years ago that he always stepped outside to take. The mood swings, the request for money that always had reasonable explanations. The distance between us that I'd blamed on his busy life. It had all been there. I'd just refused to see it. That night I called Brittany. She answered cautiously. "Hello, Robert. I know about the gambling," I said without preamble. "About the debts, about all of it." There was a long silence. Then she started crying. I didn't know until last month. I swear I didn't know. The creditors started calling the house, showing up at the door. Derek finally told me everything. I'm so sorry about what he did to you. That wasn't me. I never wanted any of that. Do you know where he is now? He's in Wisconsin, staying with his cousin. He left 2 weeks ago. Said he needed to clear his head. Really, he's hiding from the creditors, and from me. I filed for divorce yesterday. I'm taking Austin and moving back to my parents' house in Iowa. Derek's lost everything, Robert, his business, his family, his father. And he still doesn't think he has a problem. He still thinks if he can just get one more loan, make one more bet, win big one time, everything will be fixed. That's not how it works. I know that. You know that. But addicts don't think like we do. I'm sorry, Brittany, for all of it. I'm sorry too. Austin asks about you sometimes. I don't know what to tell him. Tell him Grandpa loves him. Tell him Grandpa is fighting his own battle right now, but he's thinking about him. I can do that. Take care, Robert. You too. Christmas came and went, New Year's. My 3rd round of chemo in early January. The scans in late January showed what Dr. Morgan called remarkable results. No evidence of disease, cancer-free. I'd beaten it. I should have celebrated, should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt tired, so incredibly tired. I'd won the fight against cancer but lost everything that made survival feel worth it. My son was gone, my daughter-in-law was gone, my grandson might as well be gone. I'd spent my entire adult life building something, a family, a legacy, a reason to matter. And in the end, all I had was an empty house and a bank account I couldn't spend because there was no one left to spend it on. February 7th was a Tuesday, cold, grey. The kind of Nebraska winter day that seeps into your bones and makes you question why humans ever settled this far north. Snow had fallen overnight. Not much, just enough to make everything look clean and temporary. I was making coffee when someone knocked on my door. I'd learned to be cautious about answering. Angela's visit had made me paranoid, made me realize that Derek's problems could become my problems if I wasn't careful. I looked through the peephole first. A man stood there, late 70s, maybe early 80s, expensive wool coat, cashmere scarf, distinguished looking, silver hair, ramrod straight posture despite his age, the bearing of someone who'd commanded men, who'd been obeyed without question. I didn't recognize him, but something about him made me open the door, even kept the chain on this time. Can I help you? Are you Robert Whitmore? Yes, Master Sergeant Robert Whitmore, Army, retired. That's right. The man smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. My name is Colonel James Franklin Ashford, United States Army, retired. I served with your father in Vietnam. Frank Whitmore, best damn medic I ever saw. May I come in? It's cold out here and I'm too old to be standing on porches. I stared at him. My father had died in 1978 when I was 12 years old, killed in a car accident in Germany where he was stationed. A drunk German civilian ran a red light. Deboned my father's Volkswagen at 40 miles an hour. He died instantly. Didn't suffer, they told my mother, as if that made it better. I barely remembered him, just fragments. His laugh, big and booming, the way he'd throw me in the air and catch me. His uniform, always pressed and perfect. The smell of Old Spice and coffee. The scratchy wool of his dress uniform when he'd hug me before deploying. The way he'd call me Bobby instead of Robert. But I didn't remember his face. Not really. Just the photographs my mother kept on the mantel until she died 5 years ago. Come in, I said, unlocking the chain. Please. The colonel walked into my house with the deliberate movements of someone who'd learned to manage age without showing weakness. He looked around, taking in the details, the photos on the wall, my deployment photos from Iraq and Afghanistan, the military memorabilia, the bronze star in its case, the folded flag from my retirement ceremony, the shadow box with my unit patches and rank insignia. He studied each one, then he turned to me. You've done well, son. Your father would be proud. You knew my father? Served together in 67 and 68. I was a lieutenant then. Green as grass, 23 years old and convinced I was invincible. Your father was a specialist, army medic attached to our platoon, 3rd of the 67th Infantry. We were stationed near Quang Tri, ran patrols in the DMZ. Your father, he was something else, calm under fire, always calm. I've seen men lose their minds when the shooting started, freeze up, break down. Not Frank. He'd run straight into hell if someone was bleeding. Didn't matter if it was one of ours or one of theirs. Didn't matter if the rounds were still coming in. He'd go get them, patch them up, get them to a dust-off. He saved my life, twice. Once during Tet, once in the field when I stepped on a mine. The colonel sat down on my couch without asking. I sat across from him. "Tell me," I said, "please. I need to know." The Tet offensive started January 30th, 1968. We were overrun. The NVA hit us at dawn. Coordinated attack, rockets, mortars, small arms fire. They came through the wire before most of us were awake. I took shrapnel from an RPG, tore up my shoulder and chest. I was bleeding out in a foxhole, couldn't move, couldn't call for help. Radio was destroyed. I thought I was done. Then your father appeared out of nowhere, running through the compound while tracers lit up the sky. He dragged me to cover, packed my wounds, gave me plasma, kept pressure on the bleeds until the attack ended. 6 hours he stayed with me, talking to me, keeping me conscious, telling me about you, about how you were 4 years old, about how you just started kindergarten, about how he'd promised your mother he'd come home to see you grow up. He used that promise to keep me alive, said if he could keep his promise, I had to keep mine, had to stay alive, had to go home to my family too. Did you have a family? No, never married. Dedicated my life to the army, but I stayed alive. That's what mattered to Frank. What about the mine? The colonel touched his left leg. Phantom pain, maybe. Or just memory. April 19th, 1968. We were on patrol near the Ben Hai River. I wasn't paying attention. Stepped off the trail to take a piss. Didn't see the tripwire. Bouncing Betty. You know what that is? I nodded. Pressure-activated mine. Jumps 3 feet in the air before detonating. Designed to hit your gut and groin. Kill you slow. The colonel's face went distant. It went off right next to me. Should have blown my leg clean off. Should have killed me. But your father, he'd been watching me. Saw me step off the trail. Saw the wire. He didn't yell, didn't freeze. He ran at me, tackled me sideways just as the mine jumped, took most of the blast himself. Shrapnel tore up his side, his leg, his arm, but he saved my leg, saved my life. I stared at him. My father never told us about that. He wouldn't have. That's who he was. Humble. Didn't talk about the things he did, just did them and moved on. But I never forgot. I've spent 56 years grateful to Frank Whitmore. 56 years knowing I wouldn't have had my life, my career, my success, any of it, without him. And I've spent those years looking for a way to pay him back. But you can't pay back a dead man, so I decided to find his son. Why now? I asked. After all this time? Because I'm old, Robert, 83, and I'm dying. Congestive heart failure. The doctors give me 6 months if I'm lucky. And before I go, I'm trying to settle debts, pay back favors, make sure the people who mattered to me know they mattered. Your father mattered to me, more than almost anyone. He sat down, and I saw how much the walk from his car to my door had taken out of him, the effort he'd expended just to be here. I've been looking for you for about 6 months, finally tracked you down through Veterans Affairs records, took some work. You've moved around, but I found you, and I came here to tell you about your father, to give you the stories he never told you, to make him real for you in a way he's never been, because you deserve to know who he was, what he did, why he mattered. He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket. Inside were photographs, my father in fatigues, young and smiling, maybe 25, standing next to a younger version of the man sitting on my couch. Other men around them, tired faces, 1,000-yard stares. The look of men who'd seen too much. "That's us at LZ Sally," the colonel said. "1968, 3 weeks before he saved my leg. Your father was the best man I ever knew, Robert. Brave, kind, always thinking about other people before himself. Always doing the right thing, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. He talked about you all the time, about how he was going to take you fishing when he got home, teach you to work on cars, be the father his father never was to him. Did he ever tell you about his father? No. He never talked about his childhood. Frank's father was a drunk, mean drunk, beat Frank's mother, beat Frank when he tried to protect her. Frank left home at 16, joined the army at 17. Your grandmother signed the papers. Frank told me once that the army saved his life, gave him structure, purpose, a family that chose him instead of one that resented him. He was determined to be different, to be the father he never had. And from everything I see in this room, from the man you became, he succeeded, even if he only got 12 years with you." I held the photographs with shaking hands. Couldn't speak. The colonel reached into his pocket again, pulled out a Purple Heart, your father's. They gave it to him for the mine incident. He never claimed it, never wanted it, said he was just doing his job, but I kept it, carried it with me for 56 years, and now I'm giving it to you, because it's yours, because your father earned it, because he deserves to be remembered as the hero he was. I took the medal, felt the weight of it, the history. My father had bled for this, had nearly died for it. And I'd never known. I never got to know him, I said quietly. He died when I was 12, I know. I came to the funeral, stood in the back, saw you with your mother. You looked lost, small, like the world had just gotten too big and too scary, and you didn't know how to exist in it anymore. I wanted to talk to you then, tell you who your father was, but I didn't know what to say. What do you say to a boy who just lost his hero? So I stayed silent. And I've regretted it every day since. Why now? Why come here now after all these years? The colonel leaned forward. Because I found out something about you 6 months ago. About what your son did to you. I have friends at Veterans Affairs, people who keep me informed about veterans who need help. Your name came up, the fraud case, the cancer, the attempted theft of your home, all of it. And I thought about Frank, about how he'd feel knowing his son was going through something like that alone. He'd have been furious, he'd have come to help, he'd have done something. So I decided to do something, to be the man Frank would have been if he'd lived. To take care of his son the way Frank took care of me. What are you talking about? I'm a wealthy man, Robert. Built a defense contracting company after I retired from the army. Sold it 15 years ago for more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. No wife, no children. No one to leave it to except nephews I barely know and charities that don't need another donation from a guilty old man. I've spent the last 6 months thinking about what Frank would want me to do, and I think he'd want me to take care of his son. I don't need charity, Colonel. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering restitution. Your father saved my life twice. What's that worth? How do you put a price on breathing for another 56 years? Having a career, building a company, living a life I wouldn't have had without Frank Whitmore? I can't repay him. He's gone, but I can repay you. He pulled another envelope from his pocket, thicker this time, opened it and handed me a document. It was a trust agreement. The Frank Whitmore Legacy Trust. Beneficiary, Robert James Whitmore. Assets, $2.7 million, plus the deed to a house, a lake house in northern Wisconsin near Eagle River. Paid off, fully furnished. I stared at the papers. I can't accept this. Yes, you can, because I'm going to die in the next few months, and this money means nothing to me except as a way to honor the man who saved my life. Your father. You're going to take it. You're going to live well, and you're going to remember that Frank Whitmore raised a son worth saving, just like he was worth saving. I was crying now, couldn't help it. I don't understand. Why? Because your son betrayed you, Robert. But your father never would have, and I won't either. Consider this a gift from Frank. He'd have wanted you taken care of. I'm just the messenger." The colonel stayed for 2 hours, told me stories about my father I'd never heard, about his courage under fire, his terrible jokes, the way he'd share his rations with local Vietnamese kids, the letters he wrote home to my mother that he'd sometimes read aloud to the other men, making them all homesick. He made your father real to me in a way he'd never been before. Not just the fragments I remembered, but a whole person. Someone who mattered, someone who was more than just a name on a headstone. When the colonel left, he shook my hand. "Live well, Robert. Make Frank proud. You already have, but keep doing it." "I will, sir. Thank you." He walked slowly to his car, his driver helping him in. I watched him drive away and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Maybe even purpose. I called Martin Hayes the next morning. "Martin, I need you to set up something for me. A trust for Austin, Derek's son, my grandson. I want to fund his education. Full ride to any college he wants. But it goes directly to the schools. Derek never touches it. Brittany administers it until Austin's 18, then Austin controls it himself. Can you do that?" "Of course. How much are you thinking?" $500,000. That'll cover undergraduate, graduate school if he wants it, and leave him a cushion for starting out in life." Martin was quiet for a moment. "That's generous, Robert, especially considering everything Derek did. Derek's not Austin. Austin's just a kid who got caught in his father's mess. He deserves better. And maybe someday he'll understand that his grandfather loved him enough to make sure he had opportunities his father tried to steal. I'll draw up the papers." The trust was established by the end of February. I had Martin send Brittany the documents with a letter, short, to the point. For Austin's education, not Derek's debts. Keep him safe, give him chances. I never heard back from her, that was fine. I didn't need thanks, I just needed to know I'd done something good with what the colonel had given me. March arrived with the first hints of spring. I finished my final follow-up appointment with Dr. Morgan on March 15th. Clean scans. Excellent blood work. No evidence of disease. She shook my hand. "You're officially in remission, Robert. Keep up with the monitoring schedule, but you beat this thing. Congratulations." I should have felt elated. Instead, I just felt quiet, settled. I'd survived cancer, survived my son's betrayal, survived the complete destruction of everything I thought my life would be, and somehow I was still standing. April 3rd. I drove up to Wisconsin to see the lake house the colonel had left me. It was beautiful, small but perfect. 2 bedrooms, a dock, trees and water and silence. I stood on that dock and watched the sun set over the lake and thought about my father, about the colonel, about the strange way life circles back on itself. My father had saved a man's life 56 years ago, and that man had saved mine, not from cancer, from despair, from becoming a bitter old man who died alone and angry. The colonel passed away on April 20th. I got the call from his lawyer. Heart failure, just like he'd predicted. He'd made it 6 months almost to the day. The funeral was in Virginia. I flew out for it, sat in the front row with his nephews who barely looked at me. Afterward, the lawyer pulled me aside. "The colonel left you a letter, to be delivered after his death." He handed me an envelope. I read it that night in my hotel room. "Robert, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Good. I was ready. I want you to know that meeting you, getting to tell you about your father, that was one of the best things I did in my final months. Your father would have been proud of you, the way you served, the way you handled what your son did, the way you kept your dignity. That's Frank's son right there. Use the money well. Use the house. Live. And maybe forgive your son someday if he earns it. Not because he deserves it, but because you deserve peace. Your father taught me that anger is a weight you carry until it breaks your back. Let it go when you're ready. You've earned that much. With respect and gratitude, Colonel James Franklin Ashford, P.S. There's a tackle box in the shed at the lake house. I stocked it for you. Your father always said he wanted to teach you to fish. Maybe it's not too late. I went back to Omaha, put my house on the market, Sold it in 3 weeks for $462,000. Paid off the line of credit Derek had fraudulently taken out. Kept the rest. Packed what I wanted to keep. Donated most of the furniture. Drove north to Wisconsin in early May. The lake house became home faster than I expected. I spent the summer learning to fish. Badly at first, then better. I read books, took long walks, started volunteering at the VA clinic in Minocqua, helping other veterans navigate their benefits, filling out paperwork, just being someone who understood. By September, 1 year after my surgery, I was healthier than I'd been in decades, strong, clear-headed, at peace. Derek called me on September 23rd, my birthday. I hadn't heard from him in 10 months. I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. "Hello, Derek. Dad. Happy birthday." "Thank you. I'm sorry, I know I've said it before, but I need to say it again. I'm sorry for everything. What do you want, Derek?" "Nothing. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I'm in rehab. Gambling addiction treatment. Been here for 4 months. Brittany made it a condition of her letting me see Austin. She's dropping the divorce if I complete the program and stay clean for a year. That's good, Derek. I'm glad. I talked about you in therapy, about what I did to you. My therapist said I need to make amends, not to get something from you, but to take responsibility. So that's what I'm doing. I take full responsibility for what I did. I was sick. I'm still sick, but I'm working on it. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I just need you to know I understand what I took from you. We talked for 37 minutes, the longest conversation we'd had in over a year. He told me about the program, about the steps, about how he'd hit rock bottom when Brittany left and he'd been living in his cousin's basement, dodging creditors, contemplating suicide, about how he'd finally admitted he needed help. I listened. Didn't offer absolution, didn't pretend everything was fine, just listened. At the end, I said, "I'm proud of you for getting help, Derek. That takes courage. But I need you to understand something. The father you knew, the one who'd bail you out and forgive everything and pretend things were fine, that man's gone. You killed him when you forged my signature and tried to steal my home. I'm someone different now, and I don't know if there's room in my life for you anymore." "I understand," he said quietly. "I do. But maybe someday." "Maybe," I said. "But you have to earn it. One day at a time. Just like your sobriety. I can do that. Happy birthday, Dad." "Thank you, son." I hung up and sat on my dock, watching the sun set over the lake. Didn't know if I'd meant what I said about maybe. Didn't know if Derek would stay sober. Didn't know if we'd ever have a relationship again. But I knew I'd done what I needed to do, set boundaries, protected myself, and left the door open just a crack for the possibility of something different. Not reconciliation, not forgiveness, just the chance that maybe, someday, we could both be different people. Better people. That night, I opened the tackle box the Colonel had left me, found a note tucked inside in his handwriting. "Robert, your father told me once that the best thing about fishing is it teaches you patience. You can't force the fish to bite. You just have to wait, be ready, and trust that if it's meant to happen, it will." I think he was talking about more than fishing. I think he knew that life requires the same patience, the same faith. Give your son time, give yourself time. And trust that if healing is meant to happen, it will. You can't force it, just be ready. "Colonel." I baited a hook, cast out into the darkening water, and waited. That's where I am now, 60 years old, cancer-free, living in a house my father's friend gave me, waiting to see what bites. My son is in recovery. My grandson is in 3rd grade with a college fund he doesn't know about yet. My daughter-in-law is trying to rebuild her life, and I'm here, fishing, healing, learning that sometimes the family you're born into breaks your heart, and sometimes the family you inherit from a man you never met saves your life. I don't know how this story ends. Don't know if Derek stays sober. Don't know if we'll ever be father and son again in any meaningful way. But I know I'm not the man I was a year ago. That man was naive, trusting to a fault, willing to be used because he was afraid of being alone. This man, the one I am now, knows his worth. Knows that love without respect is just exploitation. Knows that family is something you build, not something you're owed. And knows that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the consequences of their choices, even when that someone is your son. Especially when that someone is your son, because that's how people grow, through consequences, through hitting bottom, through losing everything and having to decide if they want to climb back up or stay in the pit. I gave Derek the pit. What he does with it is up to him. As for me, I'm living well, honoring my father by being the kind of man he was, helping other veterans, using the second chance the Colonel gave me to make a difference. Small differences. Helping a vet fill out disability paperwork, teaching a kid to fish, donating to causes that matter, living a life that means something beyond just survival. The other day, a young soldier came into the VA clinic, 24 years old. Just back from Afghanistan, lost his leg to an IED, angry, scared, lost. I sat with him for 2 hours, told him my story, not the cancer part, the betrayal part, the part about losing everything and finding out you're stronger than you thought. He listened, and at the end he said, "How do you do it? How do you keep going when everything falls apart?" "You just do," I told him. "One day at a time, one choice at a time. You choose to get up. You choose to keep moving. You choose to believe that the story isn't over yet, that there are still chapters to write, good chapters. You choose hope even when hope seems stupid, because the alternative is giving up, and we didn't survive what we survived just to give up now. Did we?" He shook his head. "No, sir, we didn't. Damn right we didn't. That's what I learned this year, from cancer, from Derek's betrayal, from the Colonel's gift. That survival isn't about what happens to you. It's about what you do with what happens to you. It's about choosing every single day to write the next chapter, even when you don't know how it ends, even when you're scared, even when you're alone. You keep writing, because that's what soldiers do. That's what veterans do. We keep going. We complete the mission, and my mission now is to live well enough that my father would be proud, that the Colonel's faith in me was justified. That someday, if Derek gets his life together, he'll look at me and understand what a real man looks like, what integrity looks like, what earned respect looks like. And maybe, just maybe, he'll want to be that kind of man too. Not for me, for himself, for Austin, for the family he almost destroyed. I don't know if that'll happen, but I'm patient. I learned patience from cancer, from chemotherapy, from sitting in waiting rooms wondering if I'd live to see another Christmas. From losing my son and discovering I could survive that too. I learned patience from fishing, from casting out into the lake at dawn and waiting for something to bite. From understanding that you can't force outcomes. You can only create conditions, do the work, show up, and trust that if something's meant to happen, it will, in its own time, on its own terms. So I'm here, on my dock, in the house my father's friend gave me, living the life I almost lost, waiting to see what comes next. And whatever it is, whether Derek comes back or stays away, whether Austin ever knows his grandfather or grows up with just stories, whether I fish these waters for 20 more years or just 20 more days, I know one thing for certain. I'm not a victim. I'm not bitter. I'm not the man my son tried to destroy when he forged my signature and sold my home out from under me. I'm the man who survived that, who came out the other side stronger, who learned that love is more than blood. That family is more than obligation. That sometimes the people who save your life are the ones you never see coming. A stranger on a hospital bench in a story I once heard. A colonel who served with your father half a century ago. The courage to set boundaries even when it breaks your heart. That's what I am now, a veteran in more ways than one, a survivor of wars both foreign and domestic, a man who knows his worth and won't settle for less, and a father who loved his son enough to let him fall, because sometimes falling is the only way someone learns to stand on their own. I just hope Derek figures that out before it's too late. But if he doesn't, I'll be okay. I've got my lake, my house, my peace, my father's Purple Heart sitting on my mantle, the Colonel's trust fund keeping me comfortable. I've got other veterans to help, other sunsets to watch, other fish to catch, other stories to tell to young soldiers who think they're alone in their pain. Last week, a kid came into the clinic, 19 years old, fresh out of basic, heading to his first deployment in 2 months, scared but trying not to show it. I sat with him, told him about Fallujah, about the IEDs, about the fear that never really goes away, but you learn to function through it, about coming home and discovering that the war follows you, that the hardest battles sometimes happen after you take off the uniform. He listened like I was handing him a map to survival. And maybe I was, because that's what we do. We pass on what we learned. We help the next generation carry the weight. We make meaning out of the pain. That's legacy, not money, not property, not genetic connection, but the wisdom we share, the lives we touch, the difference we make in moments that matter. That's what my father did for the Colonel. That's what the Colonel did for me, and that's what I'll do for whoever needs it. For as long as I'm breathing, I've got the rest of my life to live well. And that's exactly what I'm going to do, because that's what Frank Whitmore's son does. That's what Robert James Whitmore does. We survive, we serve, we stand up, and we write our own endings, no matter who tries to write them for us. This is my ending, and it's a good one. Not perfect, not what I planned, but good, real, true, mine. And that's enough. That's more than enough. That's everything. The sun sets over Eagle River every evening around 7:30 this time of year. I watch it from my dock, coffee in hand, rod and reel beside me. The water turns gold, then orange, then purple. The trees go black against the sky. And for those few minutes, the world feels perfect, complete. Like everything that happened, all the pain and betrayal and loss was necessary to get me here, to this dock, this peace, this version of myself I never knew existed. Maybe that's what the Colonel meant about patience, about trusting that things happen when they're supposed to. I'm 60 years old, cancer-free, living in a house built on gratitude and sacrifice, fishing with my father's tackle box, honoring his memory by being the man he would have wanted me to be. And that's legacy enough for anyone.